Calm, focus, happiness. Reach new heights of calm, focus, and happiness here on Mindfulness Mode with me, your host and mindfulness life coach, Bruce Langford. I'm here, Mindful Tribe, with a physicist today. And you know how much I enjoy interviewing scientists, physicists, so on. He's a physicist by background, and he grew up in extremely poor conditions, and he was bullied as a young person, which we'll be talking about in the show. And he eventually tapped into the workings of energy, consciousness, and transformation. So now you know why he's here with me today, in particular, the science behind all of these things. And over the last 10 years, Trevor has created and successfully exited 3 separate companies for over $600 million. And he's never hired a single employee. I find this absolutely amazing. And so I'm really excited to talk to my guest, and my guest is Trevor G. Blake. Trevor, are you in mindfulness mode today?
I am always. That's how I start every day. So
that's fantastic. Trevor, what does mindfulness mean to you?
For me, it's always meant the same thing, which is to try to find some glorious moments, even nanoseconds, where we take the person that's doing all the time and replace it with the person that's being, without judgment and without expectation. And then even if you can achieve that just for a few minutes, that's where all the magic happens. I mean, every great idea I've ever had from the companies comes when I'm in that space of being and not doing. And so for me, that's what mindfulness is.
Well, as we move forward in the interview, I'd like to ask you 5 quick answer questions. And the first one is this: who is one person that you would say has influenced you in your life when it comes to the topic of mindfulness?
My wife, without doubt. She was clairvoyant, clairaudient. And so I was kind of a child at her knee. So I learned from her the ability to set the ego aside and allow the universe in its many dimensions to approach.
And how has mindfulness affected your emotions or how you deal with your emotions?
So a lot of people who say that I don't get excited, I don't get fearful, I don't get upset. I'm very emotionally level. And that's also the emotion of intuition. It's this very calm feeling. It's, you know, if you get all excited, you're not at the right energy level. If you get all depressed, you're not at the right energy level. So when you feel very calm, you have this sense of self-confidence. I think that's the right frequency. So for me, it's all about feeling the frequency.
Let's talk about breathing. Tell us what breathing is like for you. Do you have a special type of breathing you do, or how important is breathing to you in your life?
It's essential. So, and I've studied it a lot, like you have, Bruce, I'm sure. So it depends what I'm doing and what I'm hoping to achieve. I'll change my breathing technique for that. So for taking quiet time, I teach taking long 6-second inhalations and holding like the death breath and then letting go only 6 times because it's very, very powerful. When I'm doing one of my other techniques, I use the shamanic dancing breathing technique, which is 2 quick inhalations through the nose and then out through the mouth. But when I'm walking, I'm very specific that it's all inhalation through the nose and out of the nose. It's very important to do that. Most people breathe high in, like I am now talking, breathing high in my chest and out of my mouth, and that's not a way to set the ego aside. That the ego is in full place here right now. Right, because I'm talking about me, and you can hear it. You can hear the breath is here, and this blue, my throat chakra, because I'm talking truth and stuff. You can feel your breath is very high. So I've learned over the years to be aware of my situation, and in that situation to adapt my breathing to the situation. And I observed that my wife was just natural at this, because being clairvoyant, clairaudient. You could see in her, you could see her body, the rhythm of her body change depending on what mode she was in. And so, I kind of learned by watching.
Very interesting. Well, I know that your book, 3 Simple Steps, is a perfect book for my Mindful Tribe listeners, because it sounds like it's right in line with the topics that we discuss here on the show. Are there any other books that you would recommend that are related to mindfulness and could help somebody who wants to live a more mindful life?
So I don't like to recommend books. Obviously, I'll recommend my own book because I trust it and I'm very proud of it. So I get asked a lot, okay, what books have influenced you and what books do you recommend and the rest of it? And I'm always fearful of doing that because I read books deliberately to challenge myself. And some of the best books I've ever read, I don't actually agree with their concepts or agree with their conclusions, but I read them to challenge myself because, as you know, at the back of our brainstem, we have the reticular activation system. It gives us the same stuff over and over. And if you want to grow, you've got to reprogram this. So you challenge it all the time. And so as by what you read. So I've found in the past that when I recommend a book, the person I've recommended the book to thinks that I believe every word in the book, and it changes their opinion of me. Right. So I don't like to. So it's, I mean, today with technology, it's so easy to find fantastic material. There's no excuse for, sitting on the couch and watching rubbish on TV when we have access to so much stuff that can inspire us.
Yeah, we really do. And some of those things are your videos on YouTube. They're very inspiring. And you have a way of you just sit and you chat, and it feels like you're sitting right there with me in a conversation. It doesn't feel like it's scripted or you're reading a teleprompter or anything like that. Very natural. And so I would highly recommend your videos. And I know you're on social media as well: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and your website is trevorgblake.com. So that's very easy. One last question, Trevor. Are there any apps at all that you would recommend that can help people to become more centered or more focused?
A long time ago, when Headspace was really new, I was going to work with them, and we're going to do a combined 3 Simple Steps Headspace app. The brains behind Headspace had leukemia, and unfortunately he died, and the company changed its model in a different way. Other than Headspace, I haven't seen or used anything that I particularly like. And one of the interesting things is that multitasking is impossible regardless of gender, even though people convince themselves that they're good at it. What we do is we do a thing called context switching. And so you think you're doing really well, but actually you're doing half as well and half as well. And then the more you add to that, the more diminishing returns you get. And one of the challenges is that I find that when you're trying to get quiet, trying to get into a meditative state, is that if you are listening to stuff, your brain, your 100 billion neurons have to really slow down to help you translate that information into something that makes sense in the 3-dimensional 5-sensory world. So I prefer to have nothing, because then what you do, I believe, is you let your 100 billion neurons go out to play. No distractions. You don't have to help me be a human being. You go out and play and enjoy yourselves and communicate with the universe, and I'll get the benefit of that. So I'm not a proponent of adding something. I think that a human being is perfectly capable of getting amazing results from meditation and mindfulness just by being quiet for a few minutes.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you jumping on this call with me because, wow, you have so much to share, so much value. As we conclude the interview, do you have a final word of advice for someone that is just looking to achieve a little bit more success, a feeling of, hey, I've made it. Hey, I'm doing well in life?
Well, I can always use the classic cliche: if I can do it, anyone can do it, because I don't have any skills or a background or connections or access to anything. So if I can do it, anyone can do it, which is kind of what I'm trying to teach. But by the same token, I think we live in an amazing time. I think history will show there's never been a better time to reinvent ourselves, because technology allows us to do so much so quickly. The old days of starting something and then having to build locally and then regionally and then nationally, it could take decades, right? So today you can come up with an idea and you can reinvent yourself and you can engage the world in about an hour later. Do a simple website, click the button, and you're talking to somebody in Australia. I think this is such an amazing time. So I get frustrated that a lot of people are going to miss out on this because they don't realize how special this time is, because they're still thinking of the world being as it was when they were growing up. I was told, to be successful, you got to work 24/7 and you got to be dedicated, and your work becomes your mistress. And it's all complete nonsense. It's the opposite of that. It's the less I work, the more successful I become. And technology allows us to live that lifestyle. So I would say to anybody, there's never been a better time to reinvent yourself and achieve rapid financial independence. It comes almost as a side effect now. You don't have to make it happen anymore.
Well, thank you so much for your advice and for sharing everything you've shared today. Thanks for being on Mindfulness Mode, Trevor.
My pleasure, Bruce. Thanks for the questions. That was fun, like a fireside chat, like you say. I love it.
Yeah, it was. Bye now.